True feelings out. Tony and Ziva tear up the screen in NCIS Season 24. For years, NCIS fans have waited for one thing above all else: the moment when Tony DiNozzo and Ziva David finally stop hiding behind jokes, missions, and impossible circumstances and simply tell each other how they truly feel. Season 24 delivers exactly that kind of emotional payoff, or at least it feels like it should. Imagine an episode that opens not with gunfire or a high-speed chase, but with silence. Tony sits alone in a safe house kitchen, staring at 2 untouched cups of coffee. Ziva walks in after another sleepless night, her face carrying the weight of countless battles. Neither says a word. They have survived enemies, betrayal, years apart, and more close calls than anyone could count. Yet speaking honestly to each other remains the hardest mission of all. Their latest investigation forces them to work side by side again. A dangerous international network has resurfaced, connected to unfinished business from Ziva's past. Every clue brings them closer to the truth, but every step also reminds them of the years they lost. They move with perfect teamwork, finishing each other's thoughts and anticipating every move, just as they always did. McGee notices it immediately. "They're talking," he tells Casey. Casey smiles knowingly. "Not really." "Exactly." The difference between Tony and Ziva has never been chemistry. It has always been timing. Throughout the investigation, tiny moments reveal what words cannot. Tony quietly adjusts Ziva's tactical vest before they enter a warehouse. Ziva catches him staring and raises an eyebrow. "You worry too much." "I've been practicing for years." She laughs softly, but her smile fades almost as quickly as it appears. Later, during a tense stakeout, the conversation shifts from suspects to memories. Tony admits that every city he visited reminded him of her. Every new beginning felt incomplete because she wasn't beside him. "I kept telling myself I'd moved on," he says. "And did you?" Tony doesn't answer. He doesn't have to. His silence says everything. The case reaches a turning point when the team discovers the criminals are planning an attack during a diplomatic summit. NCIS races against time to prevent disaster. The operation unfolds with breathtaking intensity. Explosions rock the building, agents scatter for cover, and communication systems fail. Then the nightmare happens. Ziva disappears. Tony refuses to believe she's gone. Against direct orders, he searches the collapsing structure alone, calling her name through smoke and falling debris. Every second feels heavier than the last. Finally, he hears her voice. Weak, barely audible. He digs through broken concrete with his bare hands until he reaches her. For a long moment, neither speaks. Tony simply pulls her into his arms. Years of fear, regret, hope, and love crash together in one unforgettable embrace. "You scared me," he whispers. "I know. No, you really scared me." For the first time, Tony's trademark humor disappears completely. His voice shakes. His eyes fill with tears he can no longer hide. Ziva reaches up and gently touches his face. "I'm still here." Those 3 words become more powerful than any dramatic speech. Back at headquarters, the case is declared closed. Congratulations echo through the bullpen, but Tony and Ziva slip away before anyone notices. They find themselves standing on the building's rooftop as the sun begins to set over Washington. Neither is in a hurry to leave. Tony finally breaks the silence. "I wasted too much time pretending I was okay." "You were protecting yourself." "No, I was protecting myself from the truth." "And what truth is that?" He looks directly into her eyes. "You've always been home." The words hang in the evening air. Ziva, usually so composed, struggles to respond. She remembers Paris. She remembers Israel. She remembers every goodbye they never wanted to say. "I thought if I stayed away," she admits, "you could have a normal life." Tony smiles sadly. "My normal life was always you." Tears begin rolling down Ziva's face. Not because she is heartbroken, because after years of uncertainty, Someone has finally spoken the words she needed to hear. She laughs through the tears. You really are impossible. I learned from the best. For a moment, they simply stand together, letting years of unspoken emotions finally settle. The romance doesn't erase the scars they've collected. It doesn't magically undo every painful memory. Instead, it acknowledges that love often survives because people choose each other despite the pain. Back inside, McGee glances toward the rooftop cameras. They're taking a long time. Palmer smiles knowingly. I think they're exactly where they're supposed to be. Even Director Vance notices the difference. They look lighter, he quietly remarks. Sometimes healing doesn't come from winning the mission. Sometimes it comes from finally telling the truth. As the season continues, Tony and Ziva become stronger than ever, not because they're suddenly perfect, but because they're finally honest. They argue, tease each other, and occasionally disagree during operations, but the walls between them have disappeared. The rest of the team notices subtle changes. Tony no longer hides serious conversations behind sarcasm. Ziva smiles more often. They instinctively reach for each other's hands after dangerous missions. Their partnership evolves into something deeper, built not just on trust, but on complete emotional openness. In the season finale, another life-threatening mission forces everyone to confront what matters most. Before heading into danger, Tony stops Ziva at the elevator. If this goes wrong, she interrupts him, it won't. But if it does, she places a finger gently against his lips. We already lost enough years. He nods. I love you. This time, the words come effortlessly. Without hesitation, Ziva answers, I love you too. No explosions interrupt them. No emergency calls cut the moment short. No misunderstandings separate them. Just two people who spent years running from their feelings and finally found the courage to embrace them. Whether NCIS Season 24 ultimately delivers a scene exactly like this or not, it captures everything fans have dreamed about for Tony and Ziva. Their relationship has always been more than romance. It has been about resilience, forgiveness, loyalty, and finding hope after unimaginable loss. If their true feelings finally come into the open, it won't simply be another television romance. It will be the emotional reward for viewers who have believed in Tony and Ziva through every goodbye, every reunion, and every impossible mission. And when those long-hidden feelings are finally spoken aloud, they won't just tear up the screen. They'll remind everyone why Tony and Ziva remain one of television's most unforgettable love stories. True feelings out. Tony and Ziva. Tear up the screen in NCIS Season 24, Part 2. The morning after their emotional confession feels different. For the first time in years, Tony Dinozzo wakes without the familiar weight of unanswered questions. The silence between him and Ziva is gone, replaced by something warmer, steadier, and unmistakably hopeful. At NCIS headquarters, the change is impossible to ignore. Tony strolls into the bullpen carrying 2 cups of coffee instead of 1. Before anyone can ask, he places one beside Ziva's workstation. No jokes today? McGee asks with a grin. Tony shrugs. I'm trying something new. Being mature? Let's not get carried away. The entire team laughs, but they all notice the small smile Ziva tries and fails to hide. Casey whispers to Palmer, I've waited years to see this. So have the fans, Palmer quietly replies. Their peaceful morning doesn't last long. Director Vance gathers the team for an urgent briefing. A former intelligence officer has gone missing after attempting to expose a dangerous international conspiracy. Several agencies are involved, but NCIS has been chosen to lead the operation because the suspects have connections reaching back to old Mossad files. The room grows quiet. Everyone knows those files involve Ziva. As they leave the briefing room, Tony catches up with her. You okay? She nods automatically. I'm fine. You've never fooled me with that answer. Ziva pauses before admitting the truth. I don't want my past hurting the people I love. Tony gently takes her hand. Then we face it together. It is such a simple promise, yet it carries years of history. Later that evening, Tony and Ziva follow a lead to an abandoned dockyard. Rain pours relentlessly as they search the empty warehouses. Their flashlights cut through the darkness until they discover a hidden communication center filled with encrypted files. Before they can examine the evidence, armed mercenaries surround them. A fierce gunfight erupts. Tony and Ziva move as though they share one mind. Every movement is perfectly timed. Every glance replaces an entire conversation. When Tony runs out of ammunition, Ziva slides him another magazine without even looking. When Ziva nearly loses her footing climbing a metal staircase, Tony catches her arm instantly. Years apart have changed many things. Their trust is not one of them. The team eventually arrives with backup, forcing the attackers to retreat. Although the mission succeeds, Tony notices Ziva staring silently at one recovered photograph. It shows her younger self during an undercover mission. She quietly folds it away. I barely recognize that woman anymore. Tony looks at the picture before looking back at her. I do. She raises an eyebrow. You survived things most people couldn't imagine, he continues. But that's not who defines you anymore. Then who am I? He smiles. You're the strongest person I've ever known. The compliment lands differently because it isn't exaggerated or playful. It's simply true. That evening, instead of heading home separately, they take a walk along the quiet waterfront. Washington's lights shimmer across the river, while boats drift peacefully in the distance. Tony breaks the comfortable silence. You know what I regret most? What? Thinking there would always be another chance. Ziva looks at him carefully. We wasted years believing tomorrow was guaranteed. Tony nods. So let's stop wasting them. For a long moment, neither speaks. Then Ziva slips her hand into his. No more running. No more hiding. No more pretending, Tony adds. She smiles. No more pretending. Back at headquarters the next morning, McGee notices something immediately. They're holding hands. Casey nearly drops her tablet. They're actually holding hands. Even Director Vance allows himself a rare smile as the two agents walk confidently into the bullpen. After everything they have endured, no one questions it. Instead, everyone quietly celebrates. Because this isn't just another romance finally becoming official. It is proof that even after years of heartbreak, impossible missions, painful separations, and countless sacrifices, two people can still find their way back to each other. As the investigation into the conspiracy grows even more dangerous, Tony and Ziva know their greatest challenges are still ahead. Powerful enemies remain in the shadows. Old secrets are waiting to be uncovered. And the next mission may test their relationship more than ever before. But this time, they won't face it as partners hiding their feelings. They'll face it together as two people who finally chose love over fear, truth over silence, and each other over everything else. Whatever danger waits around the corner, Tony and Ziva are no longer fighting separate battles. From this point forward, every mission is their mission. Every victory is shared, and every step into the unknown begins with the same quiet promise. We're together, no matter what comes next. True feelings, out, Tony and Ziva, tear up the screen in NCIS Season 24. Part 3. 3 days after the dockyard operation, the atmosphere inside NCIS is unusually calm. The evidence recovered during the raid has led the team to a mysterious figure known only as the Broker, a shadowy mastermind who has spent years manipulating criminal networks across Europe and the Middle East. No one knows his real name, no one has ever seen his face, but one encrypted message catches Ziva's attention. It's addressed to me, she says quietly. Tony immediately steps beside her. What does it say? She reads the short message aloud. Some ghosts never stay buried. The room falls silent. Director Vance orders the cyber team to trace the transmission, but the signal disappears within seconds. Whoever sent it knew exactly how to avoid detection. Later that evening, Tony finds Ziva alone in the training room, throwing punch after punch at a heavy bag. She doesn't stop when he walks in. "I thought we agreed," Tony says softly. "No more carrying everything by yourself." Ziva finally lowers her fists. "I'm trying." "I know." She leans against the wall, her breathing slowing. "I spent so many years believing I had to be stronger than everyone else." Tony smiles gently. "You already are." "Then why am I afraid?" He steps closer. "Because now you have something worth losing." The words hit both of them harder than expected. For years, Ziva feared death. Now she fears losing the life she has finally begun to rebuild. The next morning, the team tracks the broker to an abandoned embassy scheduled for demolition. Intelligence suggests he is meeting buyers interested in classified military technology. The operation begins before sunrise. McGee coordinates surveillance. Casey monitors communications. Palmer waits with the emergency response unit. Tony and Ziva lead the entry team. Inside the building, every hallway feels like a trap. The silence is unsettling. Then, an explosion. The floor beneath Tony collapses, sending him crashing into the level below. "Tony!" Ziva rushes toward the opening, ignoring the flying debris. "I'm okay!" Tony shouts from beneath the smoke. Before she can reach him, armed mercenaries flood the corridor. Outnumbered, Ziva refuses to retreat. She fights with everything she has, buying precious seconds until NCIS reinforcements arrive. Meanwhile, Tony forces himself back to his feet, despite an injured shoulder. Determined to reach Ziva, he climbs through the damaged structure, refusing medical attention. When he finally reaches the upper floor, he sees her surrounded. Without hesitation, he charges into the fight. Back to back, they battle together exactly as they always have, perfectly synchronized. One last attacker raises a weapon toward Ziva. Tony reacts instinctively, knocking the gun away just in time. Seconds later, the suspect is arrested. The broker, however, escapes once again. Outside the embassy, paramedics insist on examining Tony's shoulder. "It'll heal," he says. Ziva folds her arms. "You said you were fine." "I was trying not to worry you." She gives him a look. "That strategy no longer works." Tony laughs. "I noticed." For the first time in years, laughter comes easily between them. Not because life has become simple, but because neither of them has to face it alone anymore. That night, they return to the apartment exhausted. The city outside is quiet. Tony places 2 bowls of pasta on the table. "I know it's not exactly a 5-star dinner." Ziva smiles. "You cooked." "I tried." She takes one bite before pretending to think very seriously. "I've had worse." "Oh, that's high praise. It means I'd happily eat it again." Tony laughs as she reaches across the table and squeezes his hand. For a while, neither speaks. The silence feels peaceful instead of awkward. Finally, Ziva looks at him. "Do you ever wonder what life would have been if we'd never been separated?" Tony thinks for a moment. "Sometimes." "And I think we would have found each other anyway." Her eyes glisten. "You really believe that?" "I don't think fate kept pulling us together by accident." Ziva smiles through the emotion. "Neither do I." Across the room, Tony notices an old framed photograph resting on a bookshelf. It's from years ago, a happier time, when they were younger, reckless, and completely unaware of how complicated life would become. He picks it up. "We've changed." "Yes," Ziva replies, "but somehow we still fit." Tony nods. "Better than ever." As rain begins tapping softly against the windows, they sit together, talking late into the night, not about missions or danger, but about dreams, places they still want to visit, quiet mornings without alarms, a future no longer defined by running from the past. Outside, another storm rolls across Washington. Inside, Tony and Ziva finally feel something they haven't experienced in years. Peace. Yet neither of them realizes that hidden among the evidence recovered from the embassy is one final encrypted file, a file containing a familiar name. one that will change everything they thought they knew about the broker and force Tony and Ziva into the most personal mission of their lives. Their greatest challenge is only beginning. True Feelings Out, Tony and Ziva. Tear up the screen in NCIS Season 24, Part 4. The next morning, Casey rushes into the bullpen carrying a tablet, her expression more serious than anyone has seen in weeks. "I finally decrypted the last file from the embassy," she says. Tony and Ziva exchange a glance before joining the rest of the team in the conference room. Director Vance studies the screen. "What did you find?" Casey hesitates. "It's not just a file, it's a complete surveillance archive." Photographs begin appearing one after another. Tony, Ziva, McGee, Director Vance, even Palmer. Someone has been watching the entire NCIS team for months. Then the final image appears. Tony and Ziva standing together on the rooftop after confessing their love. The picture was taken from hundreds of yards away. The room falls silent. "Whoever the broker is," McGee says quietly, "he knows everything." Vance immediately raises the team's security level. Safe houses are activated, communications are encrypted, and every agent is ordered to travel with backup. But Tony has a different concern. If he was watching us, he looks at Ziva. Then this just became personal. Late that evening, another encrypted message arrives. This time there is no code, only a single sentence. "Meet me alone if you want the truth." Attached is an address, an abandoned naval warehouse on the edge of the harbor. Vance immediately refuses to authorize the meeting. It's an obvious trap. "I know," Tony replies. "So why are you still thinking about going?" Vance asks. "Because whoever sent this wants one thing." "And what's that?" Tony glances toward Ziva. "To separate us." Ziva steps forward before anyone else can speak. "Then we don't give him what he wants." The operation begins just after midnight. Instead of sending Tony alone, the entire NCIS team quietly surrounds the warehouse from every direction. Inside, the building is empty. At least, it appears that way. Tony and Ziva slowly move deeper into the darkness, flashlights cutting through the dust-filled air. Then a voice echoes through the warehouse speakers. "Still together after all these years." Tony instantly recognizes the manipulation. "Show yourself," the voice laughs. "I've spent years studying both of you, every choice, every sacrifice, every weakness." Ziva scans the catwalks above. "You don't know us." "Oh, I know enough." The lights suddenly go out. Gunfire erupts from the upper level. Tony pulls Ziva behind a stack of shipping crates just as bullets tear through the air. Outside, McGee directs tactical teams into the building. Casey tracks movement using thermal scanners. Within minutes, agents flood every entrance. The attackers begin retreating. One suspect is captured. Two escape. And a third is cornered by Tony and Ziva near the loading dock. The masked man reaches for his weapon. Tony is faster. "Don't!" The suspect slowly raises his hands. Ziva removes the black mask. Everyone freezes. It isn't the broker. It's an intelligence courier who once worked alongside Ziva years ago. His face is filled with regret. "I tried to warn you," he says. "Warn us about what?" Ziva asks. "The broker doesn't want classified files." Tony narrows his eyes. "What does he want?" The courier looks directly at Tony and Ziva. "He wants to destroy hope." The words hang in the air. He believes that if people lose the ones they love, they become easier to control. Before anyone can ask another question, a distant explosion shakes the harbor. The distraction lasts only seconds. When the smoke clears, the courier is gone. Back at headquarters, frustration fills the room. They stopped an attack, captured evidence, recovered new intelligence. Yet the broker slipped away again. Tony quietly walks onto the roof, needing a moment alone. A few seconds later, the rooftop door opens. Ziva joins him without saying a word. She already knows why he came. "You blame yourself." Tony sighs. "I keep thinking I should have seen something sooner." "You can't predict everything." "No." He looks toward the Washington skyline. "But I can promise one thing." "And what's that?" He turns to face her. I won't let anyone use our past against us ever again. Ziva steps closer. They already failed. Tony smiles. They did? They wanted to separate us. She gently intertwines her fingers with his. Instead, she smiles warmly, they reminded us why we're stronger together. For several quiet moments, they simply stand side by side beneath the city lights. No speeches, no dramatic promises, just two people who have survived impossible odds and finally learned that love is not a weakness. It is their greatest strength. As they leave the rooftop together, neither notices the tiny blinking light attached beneath the railing, a hidden tracking device. Miles away, inside a dark control room, a mysterious figure watches their live location on a monitor. The figure smiles. Phase 2, the voice whispers. Now, let's see how strong Tony and Ziva really are.